Oh, hey! Didn't see you there, neighbor. How you doing? I was just checking out your boat here. Looks like you might have some waterlogged. See you tomorrow. Take care now.
What's up everyone, welcome to twitch.tv/opnoobsonline, the official Twitch channel for the website opnoobs.com. We're a PC gaming site of reviews, dev talks, interviews, championships, localization, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff, including podcasts and whatnot. I'm all alone this morning on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. If you're catching up on Twitch and just waking up, I hope you enjoyed the show. We've got Phoebe in the chat who's gonna handle quite a few giveaways. We've got a bunch of game keys coming your way, but we're not here to talk about the games we're giving for free today. We're talking about the game that you're supposed to buy on Steam, and that game is Children of Zodiarcs. I'm here with Jason Kim. I'm gonna get your title right, Jason. You're the founder and director of Cardboard Utopia, a studio in Montreal.
Yes, that's exactly true. Yeah.
Awesome. A super active scene in Montreal. Let's start with that. You've got a bunch of big publishers, big PR firms that are moving from there. And it's growing fast, a lot of creativity. You have an amazing team. I start with that because the quality of the artwork really kind of pops out the moment I encountered your game on Steam, and I'm the one who actually reached out to my PR team and said, we gotta talk to Jason, we gotta talk to this studio. You've got the backing of the publishing giant Square Enix, which is exciting. I'll talk a little bit about that because I think Square is getting more and more involved into the business of supporting indie devs and indie studios, and it's definitely super exciting to see a AAA studio step up and promote the stuff that's being done outside of the creative nest that is AAA. I want to hear all about it, Jason, essentially. But let's start with you. What got you into game development in the first place? And don't hesitate to go back to the time when you were like 6-7 years old and you encountered Alex Kidd on Mega System on the Sega Genesis. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Well, first, hey everybody. I'm really happy to be here. This is really cool. Yeah. So I got into gaming. I mean, like, yeah, while growing up as a kid, we, like, yeah, I mean, I played a lot of video games and, like, I was in love. Well, I fell in love with, like, JRPGs and such. And actually, I think my dad tried to hide. Like, we went to the US and we
Sounds
bought an
about right.
NES. And we tried to my dad tried to, like,
Not
sneak it inside without paying customs, but I think I gave him up. I like kind of snitched on him, like, "Oh, we have a Nintendo now,"
Yes.
and then so customs searched us. Yeah, but
This is a very famous YouTube video about just what you're talking about
really?
these
No.
kids getting donated a Nintendo when they were just like 6-7 years old, and it's Christmas, and these kids just go ballistic.
oh, I know, I love that video where it's like
Yes.
Nintendo 64. Oh, and then the two kids are like
Say, lose it.
scratching at it like rats. Yeah, no, they just go mental over it. It's amazing.
I think that was all of us. For I mean, anybody that stems between that's in that. I don't know how old you are, but if you're anywhere between 25 and 40, that's the generation I think that was hit the hardest. Even I'd say even more so than the generation nowadays. When the industry arrived. With those first, it had a slashed down, and it's so cool to see all these people right now who are my age that kind of got into gaming. You know, there's so many people in my environment that disconnected from OP Noobs are working in the gaming industry. You're obviously one of them. And how has that conversion been for you, going from being a gamer to being a developer? What triggered it?
Yeah, so basically, it never entered my mind growing up that being a game developer was even a possibility. Like, I mean, my world was kind of small. Like, okay, I'm going to be a grocery store owner. Yay. But then it was I was 13. And it was the Game Players magazine with like Earthworm Jim on the cover. And there was an article in there about the school Digipen, and it was like it was a school where they teach you game development.
Sure.
And when I discovered that, I was like, that blew my mind and just opened up so much for me of what my possibilities could be. Of that, like wait a minute, like I can go to school and learn how to be a game developer. Like I can do this. Like, it's a possibility for me, because like being a game developer, it always seemed like something that other people do. You know, like, oh, you don't become an actor or a model or whatever. Like, other people do that, not you, not your friends. Just like this mystical other. But then when I saw that was like, oh my God, that could be me. I could actually do it.
But at the same time, let me turn that against you in a way, because you're one of the successful ones, and there's an army of developers nowadays who just like you kind of you start, they download Unity, they download Unreal, and they get some lessons, whether it's online or actually in a physical place. And Steam. I mean, the PC platform is the perfect platform to talk about some of the disappointments that developers might experience in the field, because the platform as it is, the software is flooded with games. I mean, especially especially during the summer, the indie scene seems to storm in. Probably because the AAA aren't, and so they're creating that space for the indie scene to pop in. And I'd say that 95% to 98% of the games to get on Steam now aren't going to surpass 50 user reviews, 100 reviews, user reviews at the most. So I feel like we've reached in the period of 15 years, and my question is coming, Jason, don't worry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
In a period of 50 years, we've gone from this industry is new, everybody's got to come in and contribute creatively, to this industry is flooded, and it's extremely difficult to make a dent, even in the indie scene. and with a small budget, obviously. So my question to you is, how did you do it, Jason? You may consider yourself a small team, a small studio, but in comparison to the vast majority, you're very well a success story. You're very well established. You've got an office space. You've got a team of developers. You created a beautiful product, and you got the backing of Square Enix, mainstream publisher. How does a guy get that done?
What I attribute our ability to have this success comes from is, one is that we're doing this like most of us in the team are in our 30s, and some of us in our 40s, and so we're coming in this with much later in life, not fresh out of school or anything, but we're coming in with lots of years of experience in the industry. Our lead programmer had over 20 years working on PS1 titles. Our lead artist about 16 years, me with 13 years, and so we first off we had a lot of experience. So and with a lot of big AAA titles. So that helps in building confidence and in whoever that we talk to. It's a good thing to help us get us through the door, and then that also helps in that it backs up that experience shows up in the game itself. Of cause. Children of Zodiarcs is actually an extremely huge game for the budget that we had, and I feel that we were able to a big part of why we're able to do that is because of all our prior experience in the industry.
How long were you in production?
We were in the first team member joined in March 2014, I believe.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's 4 solid years of development, if not more.
Around a little more than 3.
That's impressive.
That was for the most part, it was me and the programmer. He was working on the game part time, we stayed actually pretty small, one programmer, me leading the studio and taking care of a lot of the management stuff, our game director taking care of the design, and our art director doing art and concept. So we were small for a long time, about 1.5 years of those 3 years. But then we got another programmer and the artist and a game designer.
Would you say that Would you say that the way the team formed over the years, starting small with a small team that's really putting the nuts and the bolts into the game and designing the architecture, and then once you've got to that stage, I imagine you've got to a stage where you had enough of a body, you knew exactly that was your project, that was your game, that was your idea, and then you started adding people to the team. Would you say that the way the development stages of the games kind of split themselves into 2 parts, the first being a smaller team, the nuts and the bolts, and then the second one really fleshing the game out and taking that core and building on it, would you say that has had a positive impact on the game as a whole?
Oh, definitely has had a positive impact, because we more or less we followed the main 4 stages of game development, where you have your conception period, and then where just kind of throwing around ideas, trying to figure it out, programmers just trying little things out, building a foundation. Then we had our pre-production period, where and that's where we were. That's that smaller team, just the core team, and we were just all right, let's build out the systems, the core gameplay systems of for us in Children of Zodiarcs, it was the combat, the turn-based combat, building that out and prototyping and iterating on that, and then so once we solidified that, and we pretty much finished the core gameplay in November 2015. So it's been almost 2 years of just producing the rest of the game, and so it definitely helps because, one, you're smaller, And so no, yeah, exactly. It allowed us to really iterate, keep a close communication loop, and it also didn't. It also meant that people weren't starved for work, with one game designer having to supply the designs to two programmers. Okay, that's not enough work for them to do. That you're going to have to push the designer into crunch and everything to do that, and that's not that's not a good thing, especially when you're not at a shipping point. And also by having that we had basically one designer, one programmer working and building up the game, they could focus on one system at a time, and they can know which factors were coming in, because if there are two systems being developed in parallel, when they do come together, all right, is the game better or worse? It's hard to tell because two big things came in at once, and all right. I mean, it's not a scientific experiment at that point where you just change one factor each time. No, you've changed a whole bunch, and so what's the result of this outcome? No idea.
So I want to talk about, so there's two important things I really like to talk today about. The first one is the how the partnership with Square Enix formed and how that process has been. And then the second one is you guys seem to have a strong background in developing for consoles. Am I right? I see a lot of PlayStation signs in the back. And I'm very curious to hear about your experience working with Steam and working with PC gamers. And because I see they've been very active on your Steam forums and really contributing a very positive response on the forums and contributing positively. They love the fact that you guys patched the game as soon as it came out. Hats off on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. That's a major achievement for Steam gamers. And you've got, I'm sure you've been able to develop the game and maybe even alter the game some thanks to the community. But before we get to these two just massive conversations, let's talk about the game and introduce the game a little bit to us, Jason, to people who are coming across it just now on the stream. What is Children of Zodiarcs?
All right, so Children of Zodiarcs, let me just kind of put my pitch hat on.
The elevator speech.
Children of Zodiarcs is a tactical role-playing game, so in the vein of Tactics Ogre, Fire Emblem, Shining Force type of thing, but combined with deck and dice. So it's very traditional in the tactical RPG sense of grid-based movement, turn-based, single-player, heavily story-driven. But what makes our game different is that instead of having a static list of abilities that your characters have of spells and attacks, all of your abilities are executed through cards that your character has, and each of your heroes, they have their own unique set of cards, and you build a deck with them, and the cards they determine what it is you're going to do. I'm going to do a fire attack of this AoE and this range, but then the second part, the dice, comes in, where the dice are they determine how the outcome is going to happen fully. Because as you can see in the gameplay going on right now, the dice, they're symbol based, not number based. So it's not like D&D where it's a strict succeed fail type of binary result. But each symbol has a different effect of extra damage, draw a card, heal yourself, or get an extra action. And so that when you do roll the dice, there's a multitude of results and outcomes that can happen.
So I want to stop you here and ask you a question in terms of balancing the game. Is there something right? You laugh because balancing is a challenge. Balancing is a challenge in terms of getting the stats right between players and in combat. But balancing also comes into play when you're dealing with game mechanics that are triggered that integrate the element of chance and the element of surprise. There's one thing gamers like, it's precision. Gamers are competitive and they want to feel like they're being treated fairly by the game itself, by the math in the game. Was that something that you guys were very much conscious of in bringing in the chance factor into your gameplay mechanics? Because you don't want to take it so far. The chance factor really has that kind of fresh element that comes in at every play, where you're like, anything could happen, and the element of surprise is something that we long for, that we're excited about. And at the same time, if you take it too far, then we're going to feel cheated, and we're going to feel like, this is unfair, I'm not in control of the situation here. How did you guys deal with just finding the middle ground here and striking the balance to make the game fair and enjoyable?
So I mean, we knew from the beginning that that aspect of luck was going to be a big factor, and that the luck is very much counter to tactics. Tactics is about choosing the right tool for the right time and having a level of reliability in the outcome.
And for the record, gamers on Steam quote Final Fantasy Tactics as a source of inspiration for this game, so there's definitely respect in the community for what you've done from a strategic standpoint.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a good thing, Jason. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's like super flattering to even be to have the FFT name mentioned anywhere near us. So that's because that game's amazing.
And this is an influence, right? There's definitely a Final Fantasy influence in the stuff that you've been doing.
Not a direct influence in terms of we looked at the game and evaluated the experience and kind of broke it down. We didn't do that at all. What we did was where Final Fantasy Tactics does have an influence is in it influenced our love for the genre that was built up by games like Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, Shining Force and Fire Emblem, all those things. That love of the genre is what pushed us, what influenced us of making this game at all. And then for how it influenced us was we looked at a lot of the standards of the genre, because we wanted to make sure all right, let's not reinvent the wheel in terms of the tactical mechanics of movement and facing direction, but let's all focus it on merging the cards and the dice into the gameplay. Yeah.
What would you say are some of you and the rest of the team probably would have some great insight on that. You guys are experienced in developing RPGs, experienced in the turn-based mechanics, which to be honest are not the most popular nowadays in terms of what comes out. And we're seeing developers and studios pushing forward the turn-based genre, because I think there's still a lot of hope from the creative end that this is a genre that needs to live through, that needs to carry on, and needs to find the path forward in how to move. What would you say is the greatest? What would you say are the challenges and opportunities in developing a turn-based game? What are some of the pitfalls you could encounter, and what are its strengths that you need to really make the most of to get a great game?
Well, the biggest pitfall, I think, with turn-based games is that just by making it turn-based, just by having abilities and enemies and stats, that's not enough. Because in general, tactical games, they have a level of they have something to their experience that goes deeper than their mechanics. For example, Final Fantasy Tactics, it's a lot about the job system of playing around in the different abilities that you can unlock and you equip onto your characters, your party makeup, and that's there's a lot of the experience that comes from that, and a lot of the fun that comes from that, because
exactly,
because you're grinding with a purpose. that you're grinding to build up job points and etc. To like try out new classes.
See, and to me, that's the biggest misconception that people have on gaming. It's the bad rep that the grind has. I think we as gamers expect, especially in an RPG, expect the grind to be there and the grind to be good. So some things, it's almost like the moment you put the word grind out there, there's a negative connotation, there's a bias to it. Well, really, it's not so much the grind itself that we don't like, it's how the grind was put together that we can be very critical of. But we want the grind.
Yeah,
I think we do.
Yeah, actually, and that's actually something that's come out through the feedback, because we did fall into that trap of grinding and like kind of putting in more moments of needing to grind, but and so we're addressing that with the next patch that's coming out soon, should be next week, of where there's an option where you can toggle off the necessity of grinding. But what yeah, it's very much like you say, it's how the grind is executed. And when we when we kind of looked into it further, there's a difference between grinding because as a player you want to grind. Like, I want to grind so that I can try to collect those the loot that comes out at the end. I want to grind to get the job points. I want to because I want to do this, I want to do that. But when you have, and players are fine with that, because then it's their choice. And whenever you can get the player to be self-motivated to do something that could sometimes be seen as negative, like, they'll take it because that's what you want to do. And it's a lot about agency, and tactical games are definitely about agency. But like, where it kind of falls apart is when players feel that it's necessary, like that, like, okay, I'm feeling forced to grind, because I feel that I cannot continue unless I grind, that this is an actual wall in front of me that I need to grind to climb up.
That's the pitfall to avoid.
Yeah.
What's go ahead.
Yeah, it like the and we tried to definitely infuse a lot of this into the game, and we were pretty successful in it. The idea that, like, all right, just give the player the tools to make their own choices as much as we can. That's why in the game that we have the deck building. Like, okay, here are your cards, and it's going to unlock as you level up, but these are your build your deck, build your ability list, and the chances of getting something how you want. Here's your dice, this is what they do. Equip, you have a whole bunch of dice you'll get during battles. Equip the different ones you want, like how you want your character to play out, and craft your dice also, so that you can further customize your the dice to how you want to play. Because ultimately there's so many ways in a tactical game, and what we wanted with Children of Zodiarcs, there's so many ways to win a battle, so to speak. And which one's the right one? I don't know. Like, you tell me. Give you the tools. Right. Exactly.
You tell me.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing also about introducing the cards mechanic into an RPG, and it's also something that we're seeing more and more since the success of Hearthstone. There's replayability and there's versatility in what you can do in future patches as a developer, because you can introduce new packs, right? You can introduce new cards, you can introduce entirely new mechanics on way to fights, based on where the meta is in your game at this stage, right? Are you guys committed to Children of Zodiarcs in that sense? Is that one of the reasons you've introduced cards into combat mechanics, so that the game could continue to have its life after its launch?
So
you seem very committed. You seem very committed to getting it patched up, fixing all the bugs, getting any kinks that the players are complaining about. You guys have been on top of your game. You fixed it up ASAP, and the community is appreciative for it. Is this type of behavior from the studio a sign that we can expect more from you guys in Children of the Zodiarcs, or are you already moving on to the next title?
Well, so there's a few things to that. in terms of the support that we're the post-release support, where we're patching the game and adding in the features that players that that's causing a lot of problems for players, and the reason why is because that's a big focus for us, and we want to make sure we get those out super quick, because we want this game to be the best that we can do on with such a small team and such a limited budget, because we actually didn't get any funding from Square Enix Collective. This was funded entirely separate from. They handled the stuff exterior to the game. Okay, and there were certain things we couldn't do because of time and money, and so now that the game is shipped and it's shipped on time, we can now focus on the new feature, on adding these features in. But so these are all about making sure that Cause is the game that we wanted it to be, and in that sense, we didn't plan the game. We didn't build the game to be to have parts missing at all. This is what we can do. Let's make sure that this is
based on your capacity
contained. That's it.
Yeah.
And
you seem happy with that process. You seem satisfied with the finished product in terms of what you got done, in terms of what you could do.
No, exactly. That's what we did. That's what we set out to do. Let's make a complete game that it doesn't feel that we're confident that it doesn't feel like anything is missing from it. And so we definitely did. Leave openings in the coding and in the architecture for things to be added
for future editions.
Future editions. But we went in with the mentality of okay, you know what, we need to assume that nothing's going to happen afterward.
And we need to assume that we're coming out with a fleshed out product that's giving you everything you paid for right on the get-go.
Exactly. So we've been gamers for such a long time, and we do come from that age before DLC, and
when what you bought was what you got.
exactly, and not just what you got, but that it was solid, that it was bug free, and we're really proud of that. We've only seen 2 bugs come out from the discussion boards. It's a good gateway to the next conversation, which is Steam and developing for PC. Coming from PlayStation, how has that process been like? And can you pinpoint some of the differences that you guys found in developing a video game for a console like PlayStation, and then moving to the PC and encountering what I consider to be a much more proactive, opinionated, sometimes not always for the better, community that is PC gaming? Because we're very much involved in the game development process. Steam and Valve have been very successful in developing early access, which I think is testimony of how involved and engaged we are in that process all the way to launch. Have you guys found that, one, from a technical standpoint, developing for PC is any different from console, and does that pose any challenges? And two, how has that process been with the PC gaming community, and has that contributed in any ways to changing your game, bettering your game? Well, so how things have changed from console to PC? Well, we actually we've worked on the PC versions of the games that we've shipped already.
Great.
So we were not completely brand new to PC gaming, and so we were aware already of some of the stumbles that can be there, some of the big difficulties. Because so console is really easy in the sense that it's a single system, it's closed. What's the different configuration of the system? None. There's just one. It's just PS4. And the PS4 Pro, it's built off to be fully compatible with PS4
so
software.
No headaches there.
Exactly. But then PC, you have billions of configurations. You have the min specs, max or recommended specs that are always difficult to gauge, because someone might have the min specs, but like the way their system is configured, or like the how heavy their hard drive is, or their memory, all that kind of stuff. It can affect like whether those minimum specs are viable or not. So that's like a big difficulty, and especially with the on console, the input device, the controller, is the same across every single region, language, everything like that. But PC, you have mouse, keyboard, a billion different controllers. You have and you also have different types of keyboards. Of like you have you have a QWERTY one, you have Azerty, and then you have all the other.
It's true. I don't think
language.
about that. Yeah.
And like okay, so if we use like WASD for directional movement, WASD doesn't apply to Azerty.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps that our programmer, he had an Azerty keyboard throughout production. But like that's where like, okay, can we detect the keyboard based off of like which type it is?
You
like
had to figure out all the technicalities. You had to figure out all the small technicalities. But at the same time, it's also, wouldn't you say that from a coding standpoint, the PC offers opportunities that you might not have on console?
Well, yeah, definitely. First off, there's a lot more flexibility in the sense that we can go beyond like a hardware or a hard drive size limit that's not possible on a downloadable game on a console, for example. I mean, not that we did. The game's actually it's about like a 1 gig download, and most of that's like the music and or the audio, and like I mean it's easy to get access to people to help you test the game. Because like to release a game on console just as a private for testing purposes, forget about it. It's not open to a small studio like us.
It's a business. Yeah, it's a closed shop, high level business, big white collars in big suits type of environment. Whereas here, Steam offers you a testing platform that's pretty much gamers.
And no, that's it, and we have that direct connection to them, that we can just go on like on like Reddit or something like that, like, hey, we're looking for people to help us test our game, like you'll get a code through Steam, but it's all like private and everything, and we can do that. We can go reach out. That Steam doesn't have any requirements that we don't show certain things before date X or Y. Like they're very hands off, which it's a good thing for developers, but as we've seen with all the shovelware and the fake games and such, it's kind of a bad thing for gamers. So I mean, I'm glad they're working on their tools. I just hope they step it up.
Yeah, tighten it up.
That's a
whole different
gigantic discussion. I did want to say that what makes things much easier for developing on PC versus a console is what we realized is consoles, they don't really have dedicated forums that everyone has a membership, everyone that plays your game has a membership to, and they use it. Whereas Steam, it's been great for feedback because all our players go there, and we can go to one location to talk to them, get that feedback.
I mean, even us coming from kind of the other side of the spectrum, before we prepare for an interview, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go on Steam and I'm going to look at what players like and what players don't like. It's the best feedback. We tell our reviewers or writer, before you write a game, you go on Steam and you feel people out, like see what's the reaction is. Steam is incredible for that. But what's surprising is not so much Steam as much as it's the gamers themselves. They take the time to do that, and I think it's something that console businesses, for lack of a better term, kind of underestimate. How involved, how passionate, how knowledgeable the community is when it comes to game development itself. And I think that's really where we shine as a platform. The PC gamers is we represent. We're kind of driving the demand the way it's supposed to be driven. You know, you look at the movie industry, not to get too philosophical on you, Jason, but you look at the movie industry and it's run by that mentality that very much consoles type of have, which is we think we know what people want and we're going to create the same movies over and over again because that's what we think people want. Whereas when you take the PC platform, the guys in the suits and the ties, they don't get to say what they think people want. People say it directly, and there's you know, in video gaming, in crowdfunding, in the PC platforms, there's like direct communication between the maker and the consumer without anyone in between. And I think it's such a powerful thing. I was reading your Steam comments and discussions, and you guys have been on top of it when it comes to replying immediately. The patch isn't on GOG yet. It's on Steam, it's on GOG. Boom, we're uploading it. You know, and that's this type of dynamics we think are great, and the response you've gotten is super positive. On top of that, you've got another very very interesting thing going for yourself, and which I think also points to a very healthy kind of movement that's happening in the mainstream industry, and that suddenly, I don't want to say suddenly because maybe it's not all that new, but it's becoming more and more frequent when you have those multi-million-dollar companies who run the show. You know, they're the ones with the massive booths at all the conventions everybody goes to, whether that's Square, Activision, Blizzard, EA, you name it, and they're getting involved in indie. In a way that, and I think really Square is leading the march here on that front. They're getting involved by supporting small studios, supporting initiatives that might have been considered too risky or too original, too artistic, too artsy, like they say, for a $150 million production. But they're gonna kind of get their. Why do you think they do it? And I'm not asking you to be critical of anything, Jason, or even discuss your relationship between the studio and Square. But what do you think motivates big studios to support smaller ones?
So I definitely think it's I mean, let's be honest, at the base level it's money.
Yeah.
Like indies are growing and it's low
risk.
You don't as a public it's kind of low risk because a lot of like publishers like they're not going to put money into the development of the game. Like, all right, you know what, we're gonna put 80,000 into marketing and some post-release support or a pre-release support of like QA or maybe QA, but like, you know, getting it to Sony will pay the age rating, etc. But like but then, you know, the return is like, yeah, we might get another Stardew Valley or something like that. I mean, that's just general venture capitalism in. Yeah,
and honestly, when you have the marketing arm to deploy a game out there and make sure that it gets seen by tons of people, I mean, you're 90% there. Quite frankly, like it's all about how much visibility you're gonna get the day of your launch, and when you've got Square backing up and sending an email to their mailing list, to Square Enix mailing list, that's a huge advantage for an indie dev. How did you guys get that?
We actually have a relationship going back with Square Enix Collective, going back to September 2014. Okay. But like. I do want to kind of touch on one thing that I thought would be important to point out. Like, a lot of big AAA publishers, they're going into I mean, I haven't talked to a lot of them, so I don't fully know, because I definitely do believe that the people that are like on the publisher side that are interacting with the indie devs, they're passionate. I definitely believe that they're passionate.
But I'm with you on this, because a lot of times, especially we operate a lot in the indie scene, and so people immediately kind of jump the gun and say, "Oh, you're an indie gaming site. You're like power to the indie, power to the marginalized people." And I'm not. I'm the first one to be a huge AAA fan, because I think the AAA scene is still very creative, and the people who feel it, the people who work in the AAA scene, they're not jaded like the Hollywood people are. They're still very excited about the product itself. And I think there's a lot of passion in the people you must have worked with at that level.
Oh, yeah. And like, what's great is that when indies try different things and it's a success, that allows the people in the AAA studios that want to make something like you know,
say,
like that
see,
weird
it
thing.
Works.
Like, yeah, exactly. So that's why we are being able to see more creativity in the AAA space, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like one thing with the that I want to kind of point out about Square Enix Collective is that I definitely do feel though that money is not like I never once believed when talking with them that money was the driving factor in starting this. That might have been a good reason to allow it to happen, to convince higher ups, but I mean, the reason why we went with Square Enix Collective is, like, well, frankly, I talked with Phil Elliott, the head of Square Enix Collective, and I get his sense of like his passion for what he's doing, his vision, and like that he genuinely wants to help indies. And what's cool is that they, like, Square Enix didn't just like publish indie games. They actually went full in of making a department within Square Enix. They made Square Enix Collective that is kind of like this little indie scrappy publisher within that giant structure, and so that's really awesome.
I'm glad you named him. I was gonna ask you, who's the visionary in this entire endeavor? You know, who's the guy with the vision who said we need to support indie? We're Square Enix, we need to support indie, and so there's always a man behind any type of creative initiatives like this, and so it's glad to see that these people still have a voice in those big blockbusters with lots of lawyers. And like the rest of the team, I mean, they're still super small, but like Phil has collected a good team for the Square Enix Collective. And you seem to be very happy with your creative process. I want to say your creative process and how they have not gotten in the way of that.
Oh no, definitely not. Like,
that's amazing to me. Yeah,
because I think even really let us do what we wanted.
You can't say that about smaller publishers. I mean, a smaller publisher, you take a publisher like Tiny Build, for example, they're going to influence the development process to some extent, I think.
I've never dealt with them.
No, and they're great. We love Tiny Build. Like, they do great stuff, and the games they promote are always top notch. But smaller publishers tend to always have a say in what the developers do because they want to make sure that the sales are there. And I think the cost, the risk versus gain ratio is more important for smaller publishers. I think actually, I don't think it's for money. I think you're dead on when you say Square is not doing it for money necessarily, at least not directly or not at every turn of the occasion, because they're looking at this as, in my opinion, and I don't have the answers, they're looking at this movement as, let's see what works in the indie scene, let's try and go and support the most talented ones out there, let's see what works. Maybe we get a Stardew Valley, maybe we don't, but when we do get one, then we can take that recipe and apply it to a much bigger production. If that's the mentality, if that's the logic under which the big AAA studios are starting to support indie, I'm all for it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
Because like, that's great. Like, because with the Square Enix Collective, for the three games that are published with Goetia, Turing Test, and Us through the Square Enix Collective label, Goetia and Us, we had to go through the 2 stages of community validation in terms of like talking about the process, like the process that we went through and a lot of the other Square Enix Collective projects. Black the Fall has also come out, and they are also followed the same process of the first stage is community feedback, where on their Square Enix Collective webpage, you submit your pitch. It's kind of like a mini Kickstarter thing where your pitch goes live, and the community, the gamers, they vote on that game of like, are you interested in this? If this had a crowdfunding campaign, would you back it? And they use that to validate whether the community is interested in this game. They let the community choose which projects they continue on with. Exactly.
So there's a science to it.
Very much. There's a science, but there's also a philosophy to it of like, hey, you know what? Let's support these games. It's good. And exactly, that's why I do really love the Square Enix Collective. Let's just let people put up games. Let's let creators get a channel to the audience, to the gamers, and let the gamers decide. It works.
And it's allowed people like you to not just make their games with a full team over the period of 4 years, but on top of that, to get their games out in front of the entire gaming industry. So, I mean, you can't say no to that, right?
Oh God, no, not one bit, not one bit. Like there's like while some games might not get that big yes vote percentage, like you still expose the game to people, and that is one of the most difficult things for an indie studio is just getting exposure. Because like you're saying, there are so many indies out there, so many indie games released every year, every month. Let's be honest.
I can imagine.
It's discouraging, but you can't take it that way. You need to take it as, all right, this is the landscape. This is the environment. I need to adapt to it. I need to figure out the best way to get my head up above the crowd.
I think one of the solutions to approaching game development as a young developer is something you started with, and I think you implied it rather than being explicit about it. You essentially said, look, you might get your Stardew Valley with just yourself, in your living room with a big mug of coffee all day, and you might make a hit and sell millions of copies. Most likely you won't. And I think the endeavors that probably bring the most opportunities to a talented developer is first a social one. It's the ability to rally yourselves around developers that have experience, that have talent, that share a vision, but that might bring something different to the table. And you guys seem to have done that well. You managed to bring a team of experienced gamers together, experienced developers, and you brought together the product of a company and not the product of an individual. You can tell when you look at Children of Zodiarcs, it's a video game made by a team. The background, the room in which you're being interviewed, I think testifies to that. And you can tell, at the end of the day, we do expect when we're going to spend anything more than $2.99 on a game, we expect the product of a team, teamwork. And I think it's an important element to game development, and you guys have that going for yourself. Jason, I'm gonna leave you with two final questions that I always love to ask before closing the show. And the second question only has value if the first one is answered frankly. And the first one is, what was the most challenging part of developing Children of Zodiarcs? What would you do maybe differently or over again? What would you say you were most critical about when it came to the development of the game?
Well, there were actually a lot of tough points during this.
You seem depressed.
No, not depressed. I'm just trying to think of like what was a thing. I mean, this is not going to be my final answer, but definitely starting a company and a business and building a team the same time as building a game. That is like a lot of stuff and it's super difficult to juggle.
You're the artist, you don't want to deal with the accounting.
No, that's it. But right? you kind of have to.
You kind of have to, yeah. The same poll at Opinions.
Oh yeah. No,
I just want to do creative stuff. No, you gotta take care of the accounting.
Take care of the accounting, webpage layout. Yeah. But the biggest challenging thing was.
Yeah, from the creative end.
Probably like figuring out the best way to adapt to this new environment that we're in.
Interesting.
Because like we're AAA devs and we come from like projects with like $30 million budgets and things like that. and like a lot of layers of management, a lot of the responsibility delegated out, where like, you know, we never dealt with release. We've dealt with the finishing the game for release, but in terms of the actual release support of like talking with the community, of talking with the distribution platforms like Steam, while they've made it very indie friendly, very beginner friendly, it was still something that was something that we're inexperienced in that section.
In a way, you guys arrived in the indie scene as the spoiled children of AAA gaming.
Kind of,
right? Because kind of like, yeah, we got people who do that for us. No, you don't.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no, that's okay. But we were able to fall back on our experience, not just like in game development, but like we stayed in the industry and we built up all the experience, partly due to our ability to problem solve. Like, hey, you put something in front of us that we have no idea. Like, all right, develop a dynamic AI system that'll be running while the game is closed and offline or whatever. Like, okay, that's kind of crazy. Let's figure out how to do it. You know, you develop a lot of problem solving skills, and so that
you adapt, and in the process you evolve.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we definitely stumbled a lot during this production because we've taken on a lot of things we've never done before, but it's prepared us for what we're going to do, a next game and things like that. That okay, now we know better what to watch out for. We know better. We've learned a lot in terms of like managing a community, of dealing with the release, dealing with the Kickstarter. And how to structure our team and find a production methodology that works for us. So that was.
So it sounds like it was challenging, but at the same time, it's only made you more motivated to go on. Because you're already talking about the next project, so it was formative in a positive way, not in a I never want to do this again. Let's go back into AAA type of thing.
Oh no, not one bit. Like awesome. Going back to the AAA industry is not.
It's not
just not there as a desire. Like no,
I mean, why would you? You got the best of both worlds right now. You got the backing of AAA, and you've got the creative luxury of an indie studio. Yeah, so you've got the best of both worlds, Jason. Can't you? Yeah.
The only thing that would stop it is like if we have to close down the studio, like if things don't work
financial and all that. Yeah,
exactly. It's a financial one, which is always something that any indie will struggle with.
Yes.
Or any developer. Let's be honest. But thankfully, with our own funding, with the help with some funding from Execution Labs, it's an incubator or an accelerator for indie studios here in Montreal, nice. With the super successful Kickstarter and with a lot of the government support that's here in Canada. We were able to overcome the financial hurdles. So we're very lucky and privileged in that sense. So we didn't have to worry about the financial stuff too much, really.
Nice. So what are you happiest about? What do you think is the biggest feat of strength of Children of Zodiarc?
The thing that I'm happiest about is that we went in with a vision, a direction of what we wanted the player to experience while playing the game, like what we wanted them to get out of this. But we also, but it's kind of buried under. You need to play the game to do this. For that sense to come out. So we had to put a lot of trust in the player to be able to spot that, we didn't want to hold the player's hand and point out every little thing. Like, no, let's trust the player. Let's let them find what's cool and interesting about the game. Like, will everyone be able to? No. And will they have bad things to say about the game? Yeah, probably because of that. But but by having the players discover it themselves, they have a more appreciation for it, and which is more in line with the types of games that we grew up with, where we had to figure all our crap out.
It's what I call what you're talking about is what I call the Dishonored philosophy. I don't know if you play Dishonored from Bethesda, but Dishonored, you can finish a Dishonored game in 2-3 hours, and just basically storm through it, and then you can go on the Steam forums and talk poop about it, you know.
Yeah.
Or you can spend 2 weeks of your life discovering everything in that game, and you come out with a completely different outlook and experience on the game. And what Bethesda does here is trust the player. It's exactly what you're saying. It's about trusting that the player is going to take the long road. Right?
Yeah, and give them the tools and trust that they'll find it. And what's been super awesome is that we've seen that. We've seen people commenting about oh, it kind of feels like this and this. It's like, yes, exactly. That is what we tried to have come out.
It's satisfying to see the essentially what you're saying is that for the creative team, it's satisfying to see the gaming community discover these things and react in the way that you were hoping they would. You've kind of influenced their behavior, but you've set them free to evolve within your game, and yet even in a free environment, they kind of move to the chunkier aspects of your game and savored it. That's awesome. Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, something's come up
please.
I wish we would have done. One of the biggest hurdles kind of thing.
You're still stuck on what you could have done better. You're a good leader.
It was a bit of the messaging of the game. In terms of, I think that there's some people play the game, look at the game and buy the game and play the game, expecting that this is a very a big team and such like that, with a lot of money,
high expectations.
And while we definitely delivered a game that we felt that we're proud of, that everything
worth.
That's in there. Yeah, we definitely think it's worth the amount that players are paying, and that we definitely think that what we wanted to achieve, we achieved in there. Keeping in mind that we are a small team.
But honestly, Jason, I'm interrupting you because what you're saying is, I've heard this before many times, and usually when that happens, when gamers are starting to criticize the level of production, it means that you've tricked them into thinking you were a big team, and that's a compliment to your studio. It's basically everything in game points out to the fact that this is developed by a big team. So why is this not like this? Why is this not like that? And immediately you're being scrutinized for every single thing, and you're being criticized for not doing more. You're being criticized for having done better than you should have with your current capacity.
True.
Yeah,
that's true. Right? It's sometimes a bit hard not to see it that way.
Because we see it a lot. Sometimes you see visually stunning indie games, right? And the developers arrives on the stream and they're complaining about the fact that the Steam community is complaining about this and complaining about that, and they always end up saying, we're indie. We're not AAA. So, but usually the only people who say that are the people who have produced something that's very impressive.
Oh, thank you. I definitely don't think that I'm not putting the blame or I'm not whining or anything about the gamers. That is I see things. If someone gets the wrong message, then that's on us, the deliverer, or the deliverer of the message. That's for us to be better. I do part of it. I think that. Also, because we had a big name, a big AAA publisher, there's maybe some assumption there that they put money into the game, that our budget was gigantic because of that, which, like I said before, it was not the case at all.
Yeah, of course.
Games are very expensive to make.
Can you just name before I let you go, Jason?
Yeah.
Can you just name the artists who did the visual art, the graphic design is beautiful in the game, the colors, the shadows. Who just, if you can name them, the people on your team who did that beautiful work.
Oh, okay. Well, so all the 3D stuff was done by our lead artist, Michael Winder, who actually used to work at Shinra Technologies, which is funny. Worked for the evil Final Fantasy VII Corporation, and then it was also with the help of like a 3D artist contractor, Gwendolyn Houzelot, here in Montreal. The 2D art, like the graphic design, etc., is our art director, Erica. She's on Twitter at Orahack. She did a fantastic job, not just on the stuff that she did,
but it's great.
Yeah. And like a lot of the other, we also had a lot of contractors for the 2D art, the portraits and the card design. The card art of like Phyllis. I guess I can't. Well, you'll see her in the credits of doing all the card art and helping out with some of the backgrounds. Amber Harris working on a lot of the character portraits that you see in game.
Yes.
There Chloe, Chelsea, Kyle, Kaidi. There are just so many people.
Solid team, Jason. That's great.
We did like work with a lot of freelancers on the 2D art, because like
the animation too, beautiful work on the animation. Everything very polished, very nice. I look forward to seeing how you guys evolve.
Thank you.
What's next? You might not disclose it yet. You might not even have anything you're working on right now. And if do you have something that's cooking?
Okay, so right now a big part of our focus is on the patches and the addressing feedback for Children of Zodiarcs. Like I said, we're finishing up patch 1.02 right now. We're looking to release that early next week. Which will address some of which will give you more freedom with the camera movement. You can fast forward more sections of the game, like during the attack animations.
Yeah, I saw you guys are trying to alter the pace to a faster gameplay a little bit.
Yeah, it's stuff that we wanted to get in, but we just weren't able to back then. And so we're heavily focusing on that, and we're going to be at PAX and all these other conventions next month.
We'll buy you a beer.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, we go.
If you're there, drop by.
We'll
Definitely.
stop by for sure. Thank you, Jason. How do we follow you, and how do we follow the studio?
Okay, there's obviously our company Twitter account it's at Cardboard Utopia, one word. There's our Facebook page, facebook.com/Cardboard Utopia, one word. You can sign up for our newsletter, which I believe there's a link in our Twitter profile. And there's also the newsletter sign up on our website, cardboard-utopia.com. And for me, there's my Twitter account of @LeSaucierKim. So LESAUCIERKIM. Bit of influence from living in Montreal, and also Futurama.
Nice.
That's my personal one. I don't post too much, and a lot of it's some insight, but mostly a lot of goofy stuff that just kind of comes up. A bit of venting, I guess, of I need to just make some jokes or things like that. So those are probably the best avenues of following us.
And are you guys going to stay in the RPG genre, or are you looking to branch out and test out other genres as well?
Well, we're actually starting R&D section right now of our next project. It's a game it's a very different genre. Well, it's a different genre from Cause. It's not a turn-based RPG, a tactical RPG. It's like a real-time action RPG. And
Nice.
thanks. And yeah, so like we're basically we're not like, yes, we do love the tactical RPG genre, and that's why we made this game. We like the opportunity to make like another one, depending on reception and all that, fan reception. But like we ultimately, there are a lot of like, we
There's
want
a
to
lot of
explore
opportunities,
the
yeah.
gameplay and the
sure.
things that interest us. So yeah, like we don't really plan to just. It's not a plan to like, all right, tactical RPGs only or first-person shooters only.
You're open.
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
you're considering
do
your
what
options.
interests us. Yeah,
That's
do what
awesome.
interests us.
Jason, I thoroughly enjoyed this talk. I hope you did as well. One of my better interviews, I want to say. I'm so glad I got to meet you. Montreal is a place I want to go to, and if I stop by, I'd come and check out the studio and the work that you guys do. Thanks for taking the time on your weekend, Jason. It's Saturday morning, and I woke up, showered, and got in front of the cam just for it, and I'm glad I did. If you're just catching us up on the site, please join us, sign us up, follow us on Twitch. We're just getting the Twitch channel up and running. We've got a bunch of stuff happening this year, starting with competitions. Esports for Indies going with a full launch this summer and this fall, with big competitions coming up on games like Verdun that we're very excited about. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the Verdun community for backing us up on this initiative. We've got great shows also around the corner. We've got the monthly show popping up with a bunch of developers in just a couple weeks. We'll let you guys know for that. And Jason, we might even throw you an invite if you're down to join a bunch of developers and talk about the big games coming out this fall and in September in indie gaming and PC gaming as the industry starts to get back on top of its game, because it's been quiet. It's been quiet on the AAA front, especially. And we miss it. So that's it for us, Jason. Do you have any last comments you want to say before we turn off the stream?
First, like, if you invited me to something like that, I would definitely love to join, because I love talking with developers, and I love talking about production and the industry so much. And would it be okay if I posted the Steam store link in your chat?
Yes, please do, absolutely. Right. Promote as hard as you can, and anybody in the chat and anybody on the site who's going to see this in the aftermath, please go on Steam and buy Children of Zodiarcs. This is exactly the type of initiatives that we, in my opinion, as a community, we should support. A lot of talent, a great game that came out just, I think, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, if even that, Jason?
3 weeks. It came out on the 18th.
Okay, in the 18th. And it's still very much fresh and hot, so go play some RPG, guys. It's right there on Steam, and you have Jason to thank for coming on the stream and talking to us about game development. Guys, we're opinions.com, PC Gaming by PC Gamer. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you in just a couple of days on the next show. I'm not sure where that is. Lori, our PR director, is still asleep, but she'll wake up and let everybody know. Thank you, Jason. Have a good one, guys.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.